Terry Bogard is the main character of the Fatal Fury series and permanent guest star in King of Fighters. He is the adopted son of Jeff Bogard, brother of Andy Bogard, and adoptive father of Rock Howard. He is also, very importantly, Blue Mary's on and off boyfriend, sometimes, depending on which game you're playing. It's weird. The question is, though, why did I pick him? Well, to be blunt with you, he's a cool character. His entire story is that his adoptive father, Jeff Bogard, was killed by this man, Geese Howard. So he swore revenge on Geese Howard, went back to go killed him, adopted Geese Howard's son, who he killed Geese Howard in front of, I think, if I remember correctly. And then he just raised his kid. Of course, that's all in the Fatal Fury timeline, and the King of Fighters timeline. Geese Howard never dies, and just kind of like does Geese Howard stuff. They're the same games, different timelines. Very important. But but the important thing is Terry Bogard is the coolest. And the question of why wouldn't I be talking about him is more important here. See, Terry Bogard has a lot of interesting things to go over, like his design. He wears a baseball cap, a leather jacket with a tank top underneath, as far as I can tell, and jeans with sneakers. He is very casual. And typically, the main character of a fighting game is very uptight, I guess is the way to say it. I mean, Ryu, he's a very stoic guy. Doesn't really show a lot, but Terry, he is always up to be explosive. He's always up to be fun. In that way, he's kind of like Ken, and the two are connected in some way. But aside from just his design and cool demeanor, Terry's moveset and everything kind of infects most of fighting games. Something that you may not notice until now. Terry is just like your average American, really. There's nothing, or at least interesting, I guess. A big thing though is his personality. As I said, he is just an explosive guy, very happy, very excitable. But as you may have noticed through the background, what are those crazy powers that he has that doesn't look average American esque? Well, uh, well, how dare you for one, and for two, he does have powers. Well, he doesn't have powers. It's actually a martial arts that Jeff and Geese learned. The martial arts can just do whatever you want it to do. I know the guy who taught Terry, Andy. I don't think Andy knows the martial arts, actually. Anyway, the guy who taught Terry, Jeff, and Geese this martial arts uses it to become a 200-foot tall monster, which is, that's terrifying for one. But for two, it's also really cool. Another thing about Terry, as I said, he's an average guy. His interests include hanging around at arcades, eating good food, traveling, and playing basketball with his son. He's actually good at basketball too. That's just something that you kind of just forget. But the thing is that unlike most fighting game characters, unlike most characters in his own series, he is a normal guy. He is fighting for revenge, sure. But that's it. He also just enjoys fighting. And I know a couple guys who like fighting. That's an unironically realistic character trait to give a guy like this. So the question is, why is he so normal? And also, how does this entirely normal fellow infect all of fighting games? Well, it's about how he fights. Terry's most notable trait is his moveset. And I'm not just talking about his specials or supers. It even goes down to his throws and normals. It's obvious when a character is based off of him because, they have some similar animations. Hell, just same moves sometimes, but different names. The problem is people call him a Shoto. Terry is a Terry. Get it right. Anyway, jokes aside, the point is that Terry has very specific attacks that make it obvious to tell if a character is at least based off of him. To begin, let's go over his specials. Terry has a fireball called Power Wave. This isn't your typical fireball, of course. As you've probably noticed, he tends to punch the ground and, it sends out a little shockwave that hits the opponent. In the original games, it used to be like pillars of fire that only reached to about your knee, but that was changed to the enhanced version in almost every game that he appears in. His second move is a forward lunging punch that doesn't get past fireball like a Tatsu. It's like the Tatsu it's based off of, sorry. It's normal enough, but its specific properties make it obvious when a move is based on it. It's plus on block, it clangs or clashes with fireballs, unlike, the Tatsu, and it knocks down. This is very specific because, unlike the Tatsu, you can't very easily punish it. He has an invincible DP. The only interesting part of that is the fact that it's a stupid animation. I'm going to put it on screen. His most interesting move is Crack Shoot. This has him do a strange flip kick. He jumps, putting his body sideways and brings his legs down on the end. It's also stupid. It's also stupid looking. He fights really dumb, is what I'm saying. I'm also gonna put that on screen. Finally, Power Charge. This is an entirely normal, like, shoulder charge. That is it. I don't think it has any unique properties either. So his final move. Wait, did I call Power Charge the final move? Eh. His actual final move is Power Dunk. It is a rising knee into a punch to dunk your enemy into the ground. Yeah, this is like actually really easy to tell something is based off of this move in specific. Finally, because his specials or his normals and throws can be attributed to basically anything, his supers are what I will go over last. Buster Wolf has him rear back and then launch himself forward with a punch. And if he lands the punch, he grabs his arm and shoots a massive explosion through the enemy. You've probably seen it a lot throughout the footage in the background. But the move that you probably haven't seen as much is Power Geyser. This move has Terry rear back a punch, slam his fist into the ground to create a massive pillar of death. Yeah, that's also his better between the two supers in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Speaking of which, I might as well go over this before we get into the other characters. Terry is in a lot of games. Terry Bogard is in Street Fighter VI, Fighting EX Layer, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as some of his most recent appearances. He is also in nearly every SNK game and any SNK game that is a crossover with Capcom or anything like that. Any SNK crossover, he's in it. He also has countless gotcha appearances, which is amazing. Obviously, I think he's just cool. And, like, the fact that he appears in all of this stuff should really show you how far his reach goes. Thus, whenever we get into other things, it's obvious it's obvious why these characters are based off of him at the very least. Oh, and one last thing. He appears in SNK Heroines where he plays as Cutie Terry, which is just Terry, but a woman. And the entire story of that game is that he gets turned into a girl and he's like trying to turn back into a guy. And the only reason this exists is because SNK doesn't want to make a game without him. I promise you, we're not getting Art of Fighting 4. That's a joke. We probably are eventually. So we're going to start off with the obvious. Soul Bad Guy. You've probably heard someone talk about how Soul is based on Terry Bogard at one point or another, but they may not have gone in depth about it. If you've seen the Wolfemonger video, he definitely went in depth about it, but I'm going to go in depth about it because it's kind of cool. To begin, Gunflame is a low hanging projectile that used to look like pillars of fire in the original thing. Now it more accurately looks like a wave. Similar to Terry, his thing slowly went from pillar to wave. I think this is interesting. He also has an invincible DP, but at this point, that's not even an interesting thing, nor does he have the stupid animation. Fenrir, I think it's Fenrir, is a forward lunging punch that doesn't get past projectiles but does knock down. It's also on fire, making it very similar to Terry Bogard's, burning knuckle, which I have to be honest. Whenever I asked my buddy to look at the two images side by side and I asked him to say the difference, he said, one's in the left hand. And, Loki, that's a good point. Bandit Branger is a rising knee that ends with a fire dunk straight to the floor. For some reason, in my script I have, it's terrifying how consistent he is. Yeah, this is fairly consistent. He is, actually really like Terry. Bandit Revolver used to just be crack shoot, but with fire. I'm not really sure if this is still how Bandit Revolver goes. I don't play Soul Bad Guy. I actually play Slayer, so this goes further, actually, though. See, Terry has a name throw that I forgot to mention, where he grabs his enemy, tosses them over the back, and slams them into the ground. This throw is called Buster Throw. Why is this a name throw? I don't know. This is basically just always his back throw. So, Soul has a command throw, or a command grab, that does this exact same thing. But wait, there's more! Soul's jumping punch is a similar animation and hitbox to Terry's jumping light punch. His kick is similar to Terry's backspin kick, and his crouching kick is also similar to Terry's. Now is a good time to mention, I forgot to mention a lot of Terry's most important normals and throws. I'll mention them when they come around, but backspin kick is a spinning kick that tends to spin the opponent, because Terry spins backwards. The final thing is a super. No, he doesn't have both of Terry's super, he only has the one. Tyrant Rave. This is literally just Buster Wolf without the lunge. Actually, they're the exact same move, except Tyrant Rave doesn't have the lunge that Buster Wolf does. A small detail Wolfemonger mentioned is that you can see the cast of Fatal Fury in the background of the first Guilty Gear game, and it's actually a really cool detail. If you want my advice, I'd go watch the Wolfemonger video before continuing with this one. I would appreciate if you finish this video, but, Oh, wow, e-begging this early on? God, in my existence. I can't say that. I'm gonna keep that in, though. That's low-key kind of funny. But, on top of that, I can't really say that Soul's design takes too much from Terry. Maybe in the red with the jacket and all that, but I don't really see any inspiration past that. I guess I can kind of see it in their stories. See, while Terry is just a guy traveling and eating good food, Soul is a bounty hunter, from my understanding, who travels around and eats good food. And similarly enough, he has a sort of on-off relationship with Jacko Valentine, I think. Don't quote me on this. I'm not some lore expert. I actually never bothered to learn the lore. All I know is dandyism, and that's about it. Judge me later, okay? But I feel like this one is a much more obvious pick, and so is the next one. So this gets you the idea of what I'm getting at here with these first two picks. Another obvious pick is Anelia from Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising, or just the Grand Blue Fantasy series in general. I said the full name of the game I own. Man, I'm a dipshit. Anyway. But, as I was going to say, she's obviously Terry. That's like her whole purpose. She's one big SNK reference. She has a low-profile sheet projectile, a forward-lunging punch that knocks down. There's a DP somewhere in there. She even gets short hops, which is unique to SNK games, and nobody else in her games can do. She also gets the supers, such as Sheep Geyser and Buster Wolf. They're literally the same moves as... I said Buster Wolf. I said... In my script, it's Buster Floof. I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think the name I've originally heard it by is Buster Wool, which makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, but these moves, just like everything about her is one big. It's one big game. It's just one big. It's just one big Terry reference, and I love it. Anelia is a funny character. The AX version of her short hops gives her a butt slam that acts like a dunk, and that's really it. She has normal similar to Terry's backspin, back kick, crouching light kick, and her jumping medium is Terry's jumping punch. Her point is to be a reference to Terry Bogard, so of course this section is going to be rather short. I will just real quick show you all of her special moves in action though, so you can get a general idea of why this character is just a Terry Bogard reference. And truth be told, I love this. This is hilarious to me. God, the tiny sheep woman being a Terry Bogard reference is beyond hilarious. Oh, yes, which character should be like this American beefcake? Oh, what the small sheep woman? Genius! And heck, we can even make it funny because most of his attacks are named after wolves. I don't know. That's just stupid funny to me. So, if you have the time and if you have the money, I'd go buy Grand Blue Fantasy or any of the games, play them, and play Anelia. She's hilarious. Finally, for the obvious picks, is actually a not so obvious pick. Annie from Skullgirls. She's based off of Soul Bad Guy, and ignoring the situation of how old she is because I don't want to think about that. She's supposed to be a Soul Bad Guy reference. That's her thing. But it's it's kind of funny, okay? To begin, actually, all of her normals, I can't say anything to. Like that's it. Like her normals are all hers. I'm not gonna put any images on screen. Maybe I'll put her snapback on or her smackback on screen because it kind of has a similar animation to Terry's backspin kick. And I think if Terry were to be in a tag fighter, I think that would be a good use of the animation. For me personally, I think that would be a good use of it at least. But to get into her special moves, Crescent Cut. Oh my god, I can't speak. Is a low profile projectile that doesn't look like a wave. It's more like an air slash from an anime. It's still like Power Wave, but closer to its original pillar variation from the older games. North Knuckle. Listen to that name. Look at the image on screen. Are you really, really going to ask this? She has an invincible DP. Man, that's quite unique and something Terry totally created. Look, I'll be very honest with you. Putting her here is kind of getting into what I'm getting at later. Characters will steal aspects of Terry and work them into their own game systems rather than just being Terry Bogard like the other two characters. Everyone from here is still Terry Bogard, but better fit their game's own systems. Soul fits his system just fine, and so does Anelia. It's just everybody else here just steals parts, bits and pieces from him, and works that into their own systems. Except for Power Geyser. Alright, I'll be very honest with you. Pillar of Creation is straight up just Power Geyser, except she can actually use it at different ranges. That's not even a meme. She does the exact same animations as Power Geyser. Which is so funny to me that I've decided to put this character here. Honestly, I think I could have lived without her anywhere close to this video. But due to her being a sole bad guy reference, I think it's fairly obvious that she is probably at least semi based off of the GOAT, the king, the glorious man himself, Terry Bogard. Yeah, if you can't tell by now, this entire video is just going to be me glazing Terry Bogard. Get used to it. To begin with some of the less obvious picks, I'm actually going to start off with NetherRealm Studio. Now, if you're familiar with fighting games, especially NRS, then you know typically comparing them to characters from other fighting games is a losing fight. Most of NetherRealm's thing is built off of nearly every character being really strange in all honesty. There are definitely some characters that fit it. There are some characters that better fit archetypes than others. But what I didn't expect was to find a character that has some of Terry's most important moves, just with a bit of extra flair. And that's where I get into Lee May. See, Lee May is from the 3D era of Mortal Kombat, and she was a really popular character. I'm going to keep that blunt with you. People liked Lee May. So when they brought her over to 2D, what I didn't expect was such a drastic change in MK1. Or M1K, actually. A lot of people call it M1K, so I'm going to call it M1K. To put it blunt, I was not super familiar with her in M1K because I didn't play her. I played Ashura. But whenever I started learning about her, I have to be honest, I was shocked. And I still am. I still very much am shocked with how she plays and her specials and everything about her, really. It just feels like such a change from that 3D era. But of course, I know you're curious, so allow me to explain. See, Lee May doesn't exactly have the low profile projectile. She actually has an entirely normal fireball. But that is basically the only thing she's missing. She has a flip kick that almost works like a short DP. In fact, I think it's meant to work as an anti-air and combo tool, at least as a combo ender, similar to a DP. I know it doesn't have a DP. Like, the reason that they're called DP is because it's named after the input that you put in for it, a Dragon Punch. But it still works like a DP. And it actually has a really close hitbox to the light version of Terry's Rising Tackle, which is the name of his DP that I just kind of offhandedly throw at people, which is very specific, actually. She's a forward lunge that isn't a punch, but rather a knee, and doesn't just end at the punch. It actually has an automatic follow up, but that follow up just does the same things as Terry's Burning Knuckle. In fact, as far as I can tell, on a second use, it does just become a Burning Knuckle. Now that I'm actually looking at it, it even has similar ranges, which I know it seems stupid, but a similar range to a move can also indicate a lot about it. I actually don't think that's finally, but she also has an aerial flip kick that has similar uses to Terry's crack shoot. It even has a kind of similar animation, except it looks much more practical. Now, while I could go over the normals and throws like I do for other characters, Mortal Kombat actually has pretty homogenized normals and throws, and that kind of ruins that idea. But what I will say is that one of her strings looks like backspin knuckle. It like legitimately looks like it has a backspin knuckle in it. If I can find this string, I'm gonna put it on screen. But if I can't, you're just gonna have to trust me. All right. Point is, she actually has some of the tools to play like Terry. She is legitimately the closest thing to a Shoto that this game has since they removed Johnny Cage's Shadow Ball, as far as I can tell. So, with that, why even bring up NRS at this point? See, the reason I decided to bring up NRS at all is because their games are so different. A lot of people tend to down at people who play exclusively NetherRealm games because they're easy. They're some of the easiest fighting games that you can find on the market. But that shouldn't be how we look at it. In all honesty, NetherRealm games are just as much as fighting games as anything else. And Lee May is proof of that. She is essentially a normal Shoto with some of Terry's moves. So I beg the question, why do we look down on them? I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some things that they can't say when it comes to fighting games, like commenting on difficulty. You've purposely chosen to play some of the easiest fighting games in the market. You shouldn't be able to complain about difficulty when you choose to go into a more difficult game. You're making this conscious decision. But also at the same time, we shouldn't look down on them for playing these games. It's just a situation of you gotta understand where your limit is. But also, I'd like to remind everyone that everyone starts somewhere. Not everybody started playing 6-button fighting games. I started with Mortal Kombat versus the DC Universe. God, that game was awful. My point is, why do we look down on these people? They're part of the same community as us. They're just choosing to play different games. And even then, those games aren't too different. So keep that in mind. Similar to the previous section, I'll be getting into a different kind of fighting game. Except this time, instead of just being a fighting game that doesn't normally follow the rules, I'm getting into an entirely different genre of fighting game. We're talking about tag fighters. Now, before I begin, KOF isn't a tag fighter. It's actually a team-based 2D fighter, which essentially just means that you swap characters when you lose. But Bardock from DBFZ and Invincible from Invincible Versus are from tag fighters and do steal a lot of stuff from Terry. Now, the big thing here is that I actually won't be giving you advice on what to use these characters for. I don't use these characters. Bit of a newsflash here. I don't use every character listed here. The reason I'm going over them is because I want to make this point a bit clear. Terry is almost everywhere, and it's super important that you know that. So I'll leave the homework on team design and where to put these characters to you. It's also important to note that these two also have quite a bit of overlap, which it's just, it's just to be expected at this point. They're tag fighters. Tag fighters typically have some overlap, and it's ignoring the overlap that they already have with Nova from, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So, you know, with that, let's get into Bardock from DBFZ. Bardock's kit design is partially based off of Soul Bad Guy, mostly because this is an Arc System Works game. And I love Arcsys, but I'm going to be real for a second. They just kind of put some of their characters into other games. To begin, he has what is essentially Blazing Knuckle. I forget the actual name of the move, but it's a great, it's great. It's also on block, and it's great for his pressure sequences. Plus, it just skips the neutral, which is what Burning Knuckle does. That's really it. He has a move similar to Crack Shoot, though it's just an overhead. It's pretty damn important, though. Note, both moves have similar uses. His final special is a miniature Buster Wolf in the style of Tyrant Rave. Not a moving Buster Wolf is what I mean. It's essentially just a small Buster Wolf in which he punches the opponent's gut and then does the blast thing. It's kind of boring, admittedly, because he only has the 3 specials, and the 3 take up the admittedly 2 most boring moves in Terry's entire move kit. But no worries. His normals, those only having those 3 allows us to get to his normals faster. For one, his 5-8 is a backspin knuckle essentially, and is mostly used for his proc string. That's it. Really, this character is fairly bare bones, which makes sense. He does have Buster Wolf as a super, but it's just there. Yeah, one of his supers is straight up just a Buster Wolf, but I don't know. I do like how they managed to keep Terry's mix of Gorilla Brain tactics and Shoto-esque moveset with Bardock's design, but Bardock is by far a bigger gorilla than he is Shoto. Not like I'm complaining. The differences here matter a lot because you gotta remember, he is from a entirely different genre. I don't believe Terry would be a good character in a tag fighter. So removing certain moves like Power Wave and hell, even Rising Tackle can go a long way. But also at the same time, it would make some sense to give Bardock a shoulder charge, which he doesn't have. And that's really it. Overall, I think you're getting the idea. These tag characters are going to be a bit more bare bones in return for being, well, semi different characters. They're still mixing the Shoto esque game plan with guerrilla mode, which, as I said before, that's pretty much Terry's entire plan. He wants to go guerrilla mode, despite him being a Shoto. Honestly, that's an entirely different argument in and of itself, and I don't want to get into it. Secondly, is Mark from Invincible Versus. Every character in this game only has 3 special, and to be honest, if Mark did have a low profile projectile, there wouldn't be a question on this section. However, I think if you've played the game, you've seen and you've been paying attention to the video, you know what I'm about to get at. Meteor is a flip kick that works exactly like crack shoot, a forward lunge with the same properties as Burning Knuckle, and a power dunk essentially. On top of that, he does have a backspin knuckle, and as I said before, this section is going to be fairly short because I haven't played Invincible Versus. I know a lot of it through um stuff like Game Burst's videos showcasing the characters. But the important thing is that they took some of the most important parts of Terry and put it into a moveset that makes him a bit more of a gorilla. As I've said before, I don't think Terry would work in tag fighters. So taking the parts of him that would work in tag fighters and using that on a different character that has only those tools is actually really interesting. I do have to say, initially this section was also going to have Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate in it, but I decided to scrap that because, well, it's just kind of not there. For as much of a stretch as these two sections may seem, they're honest looks at it. These characters both have the exact same special moves essentially, but their big difference comes from how one of them has a different move than the other. You may have noticed that both of them have a burning knuckle essentially and a crack shoot. And you may be wondering, why are those the two moves that they get? Fairly simple. Any other of Terry's moves don't work in tag fighters. Tag fighters are very fast paced games, and typically you need a way to skip neutral so that you can get in there fast. So, if you keep Terry's best neutral tool, Power Wave, you're essentially attempting to play against what the game wants. On top of that, while Rising Tackle is cool and all, an Invincible DP doesn't get you anywhere really. I think Mark might have had one in testing, but he doesn't have one now. And finally, for as much as I said shoulder charge would be a good idea, it only works if it can wall bounce. And here's a bit of a spoiler for you. Power charge doesn't wall bounce unless it's advanced, and typically you don't want to be wasting meter in these games. You want to save meter for those big damage supers. So I think dumbing down Terry to just Burning Knuckle and Crack Shoot with one of the other moves would be perfect. Because that would work better for a tag fighter. And ultimately, that's what this section is about. It's about Terry and tag fighters. Of course, the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 comparison might have worked as well, but these are two much more recent examples with a bigger fan base behind them because DBFZ DBFZ DBFZ, no, I was saying that correctly. DBFZ recently got a massive update with a new DLC character that everybody seems to be loving and hating, and Invincible Versus is a new game. So of course, these were going to be topics I wanted to talk about, and I think I just happened to get lucky. So, with that said, I would like to remind you, Terry will probably not be in a tag fighter for a long time, and if he is, he might not be the same Terry that we remember. So I might as well give you a bit of a history lesson before I actually explain this. I think back in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, um, Arc System Works, the guys who created Guilty Gear, were in a bit of a struggle to get it back because like Sega was about to like own it for a bit. So, as a bit of a way to, I guess, fix this problem, they decided to make an entirely new fighting game series called Blaze Blue. If you are familiar with Blaze Blue, this section's title makes way more sense to you now. And honestly, yeah, it was obvious I was going to talk about this guy eventually. It's Ragna. Ragna, I forget his name. It's just Ragna. Now, the thing is, with Blaze Blue, not only do I not really like the game series, it's also a really complicated game series. Not like that's the reason I don't like it. I don't like it for other reasons, which I'm not going to talk about, but I don't really like the game series, is my point. Anyway, Ragna is essentially a less buff version of Soul with a cooler outfit, if you ask me. Now, now the reason I chose to talk about Ragna is because his game series is super complicated, as I said, and that's like a perfect example to see on or to see how Terry would work in a more complicated game. Thus far, we have talked about games that have generally the same button layout, anywhere from 4 to 6 buttons, depending on the game. I mean, sort of with Invincible Versus, I've heard some people call it a 12-button game, but, you know, that's its own thing going on there. Truth is that Ragna is Soul Bad Guy, somewhat. So, to begin, this game has a lot of buttons and mechanics. There are 4 buttons, with the fourth controlling a character's drive moves. On top of this, you need to worry about when to use your counter assault, crush trigger. Also, you need to keep on top of your distortion drives and astral heat. And finally, even your exceed excel, which I don't know what any of those are. I'm going to be real with you. When I played this game, I played Susanoo, and I just didn't think about that at all. That's a lot, and it can't really be dumbed down, unfortunately. And as I said, this is the reason I'm covering Ragnar. It's a look at what Terry would look like in a more complicated game. It's really my entire point here is to show you how Terry would how Terry could translate into these things while also fitting the systems. It's important to say, not all of these characters are just Terry Bogard. That was just the first part. Everyone in that first part really was just kind of like Terry Bogard, but in a different skin. Everyone from there has just been Terry Bogard in different things, with different moves sometimes. And I don't even know where to begin with this crazy character called Ragna and his exceedingly complicated game. Phew. Honestly, I should probably play the game again sometime and try to learn it and make a learning fighting games with zombie video on that. That would that would make a lot of sense. Finally, his moves. Of course, he has literally every single one of Terry's moves except for the shoulder charge. For some reason. Oh, wait, why doesn't he have the shoulder charge? What? Forget it. It's wild how much DNA Ragnar and Soul have. The biggest difference is the amount of specials, of course. Ragnar has 11. No, you didn't miss here. 11. Most of which are different versions of the same special. He has a variety of similar moves, which is really cool. Um, Ragnar doesn't have the back throw or buster throw, which I do find a bit weird. He doesn't have mini normals in common as well. Uh, he does have his drive moves are fairly normal. Most of them are uppercuts. But when you get to his supers, he does have a Buster Wolf that does have the forward lunge. And if you want to consider it so, he has a power geyser. Of course, as I said, he has all of Terry's special moves. He has a he has a much more literal wave attack, which, it looks like the wave. He has, as I said, a much more literal version of Burning Knuckle. Unlike Soul, who has his own little coat of paint, this character is much closer to Terry than Soul was. Um, I can't really remember it at the moment, but I'll show it on screen. There is also this weird kick thing that he does. I think the kick also is pretty similar to his crack shoot. I think it is. He also has the invincible DP, but as I've said many times by now, that is far from a unique Terry thing. So pretty cool. And finally, he does have a power dunk. I'm fairly sure he has a power dunk. Ignore the background audio for a second. Oh, it's not a kick. It's an overhead knuckle. Actually, I don't think he does have a. Actually, I don't think he does. Yeah, I'm pretty stupid, aren't I? And he does have a kick that sort of works like it as well. But not the point. See, this is a look at what Terry would look like if he were in a much more complicated game. Most of Terry's games that he appears in are 6-button games with maybe a second bar. This game has a lot of mechanics to it that you have to keep on top of. Oh, just looking at the universal mechanics, he has a forward throw, back throw, an air throw, and a counter assault plus his crush trigger. This is kind of wild, honestly. Either way, I ask you to keep this in mind. None of these characters are Terry Bogard, but they're Terry Bogard in a way. They're inspired by him, they have some of his moves, and the most important part is that Terry Bogard holds importance to them in some way. Soul Bad Guy was directly inspired by Terry Bogard. Same with, well, I was gonna say same with Axel Lowe. Axel Lowe is actually based off of Billy Kane, who is, eh. And a character based off of Soul Bad Guy is automatically based off of Terry Bogard. But it's important to remember that these characters aren't just Terry Bogard. When you see these characters, I don't want you to look at them and go, oh, well, it's just Terry Bogard. That's really uncreative. They just stole the idea. Because it's not what they did. There's a very big difference in fighting games between stealing an idea and basing a character off of another. That should be how it always is. You should understand what an archetype is. And that's why I made this video. Why did I make this video? Why did I pick Terry Bogard? What is the point? I made this video to show fighting game players the importance of the original character. I also made it to show off one character, or how one character can travel an entire genre while not being their own. While not being their own complete character. God, my script was terrible. God, oh my god. I just said that a lot, I'm sorry. The archetypes that we use, that we define characters, are so loose that Terry, despite being very different from any other Shoto, is still called a Shoto. When he is so much more. He's a really important character to not just fighting games, but to gaming in general. Again, go watch Wolfelmonger's video if you want that. But his importance to fighting game goes beyond just the games that we buy on their own. He is an important character to Mugen, the engine that was used to make fighting games. His moveset and his sprites were stolen and recolored and remade to fit all sorts of characters for that engine. I also made this video to nerd out about one of my favorite fighting game characters. In my script, it says my favorite. No, my favorite fighting game character is Spinal from Killer Instinct. Still, and share some knowledge that I've learned through my years of playing fighting games. Sorry. To end the video, I would like to thank the following people. Rufflemonger for the idea of a Terry Central video. Go watch Rufflemonger's The Terry Bogardification of Video Games. Gameburst for his Invincible Versus showcases. As I said, I've never played Invincible Versus. I've still yet to buy it. The moderators and editors of Dustloop. This was very helpful to see stuff like how plus or minus something is on block because I didn't want to go do that. My former esports team coach for introducing me to Terry. I found out about Terry through Super Smash Bros. And my esports coach played him once against me and I thought he was cool. So I played him. And finally, I'd like to thank Takashi Nishiyama. I think I said his name correctly. I'm sorry, Mr. Nishiyama, if I messed up your name. For creating the coolest and most American fighting game character in the world. Eat your heart out, Ken Masters. You will never be Terry Bogard.